What's going on, tubers? Tio here, Simplistic Fishing, back at you tonight to finish up Caney Creek Reservoir out in Louisiana. I know if you guys have been paying any attention, we've done a couple of Google Earth videos on that. So now we're going to move over. We're going to use the Navionics web app to look at the contour lines, the different structure and things like that, and see what we can find for hotspots on this lake. I've got some good stuff for you. Stick around. Let's go. All right, so let's jump in here to Caney Creek Reservoir out in Louisiana, and let's just kind of talk about the offshore stuff. So as I mentioned in the introduction, we did the Google Earth stuff, so if you missed those videos, I'll put a link up here at the top so you guys can go back and check those out. But definitely go check those out. That's what we were able to find from the satellite imaging using Google Earth. Now tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to use the contour mapping from Navionics mobile app to really find some hot spots on this lake to fish more offshore. So what we're going to do is we're going to start down here, down by the dam, like we always do, and we're going to work our way up and to the right. So if you'll notice here down at the dam, obviously you've got a lot of riprap and things like that. This would be considered a primary hotspot. What I really liked about this right here is there's a little shelf right here. Notice it's about 12 foot. And then it drops off to about 24 foot. So make sure that if you're out here fishing, you're not just fishing right up against that riprap, but also that second little lip that's out there as well. Pay some attention to that, especially as it gets later on into the summer and they want to get a little bit deeper. Also, if you were watching any of the Google Earth videos we did on Caney Creek Reservoir, you'll notice right out here in the middle section, right in this area, there were a ton of boats that were out there. And it looked like they were, couldn't tell what they were, but it looked like they were crappie fishermen. Well, when you zoomed in and you started looking at some of the stuff that they have out here on Navionics, it looks like there's a bunch of pallets and piles that they scattered all throughout this area. And then if you also notice, there's two main creek channels coming in, one right here and one right here. And most of those boats were somewhere around the area of those creek channels. I'm imagining there's a lot of debris and stuff like that. So if you're a crappie fisherman, that is definitely an area you want to focus on. Really just draw a big, huge box or just use that creek channel to kind of as your box and stay in there. And then maybe also pull out because it does say that there's more piles over here on this marker 508. All right, so as we move on in, just kind of taking a look at contours. Obviously you can't fish too much in here, but there is a pretty good little ledge right in there if you can get in there and fish. There could possibly be some current at times and things like that. So you could see if they're setting up right on the edge of that current. So some possibilities there, but really nothing we can mark for you guys in that area. And I didn't see too much really from a shoreline perspective that really caught my attention. Now, as you move out here, though, you do have a pretty good hump that's out here. This one's in about 21 foot of water at the top, but the bottom is 28 foot. So even though it seems kind of deep, it's a 7 foot difference in your depth there, which is pretty significant when you're talking bass fishing. That's definitely going to give you a hump, definitely going to give them something they can relate to, hide around, ambush bait, and stuff like that. Now, as we move further up the shoreline, really other than just your normal points, even some of these points just really don't look too promising. You've got a little bit of a ledge there on that point, but I don't see anything there that really stands out to me. Now, as we move back in here, though, you'll notice that there's some pretty sharp drops right in here. Notice how the contour lines, they're almost gray. They're so close together. It's because it's so steep right in that area. So that is definitely going to be a good area to go look at. You got a nice drop off there. You've actually got a couple there. If you look really closely, you've got one right where I put that marker at. You've also got another one right over here and another one right over here. So kind of similar to the dam area. You've got basically that secondary ledge that gives you that little drop off. So anyway, it's just a good spot to check out. And as we're following this down, again, not too much from a shoreline perspective. You do have some fishing facilities that are out here, but I've got those all marked for you guys on the Google Earth side, so you'll be able to see those. But as we move up here and we get around this little bend right here, this looks pretty interesting. Notice you've got a pretty good little shelf here, 24 to 35 feet, so 11 foot drop right in that area. And it looks like that creek bend kind of comes up and slams against it, and that's what's giving you that nice break there. So that would definitely be an interesting area to go look at to see if you can locate some fish there. And then as we move on down, of course, you've got these points and things, but nothing too special on the points that I could really mark for you. no big tops or anything like that. But out here on the creek channel, we got some pretty good stuff going on. This is 20 foot to 28 foot to almost 30 foot. So again, another really big drop, a pretty good deep pool that's right out here. Definitely a good area to go out and take a look at. And then as you're just moving up that creek channel again, you're looking for where those turns and those bends are. And if there's anything special about any of those turns, you definitely want to mark them. And that's, again, going to be a really good spot right there. Now, one spot that we didn't mark that you may want to check out is this point right here. This point looks pretty interesting. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and mark this point as a good spot to take a look at, because if you look at that point, it has that nice flat top to it. And we're always looking for those flat tops on those points. And if you can find those are always the best spot, to go and try to locate some fish. So definitely I'm going to mark that point there, and then we're going to move up, kind of following the creek channel. Next thing is obviously going to be this pinch point right here where this bridge is. Those are always prime spots to find some fish. And then moving back, just looking at these points, again, just not anything too good that I can show you. I mean, we talked about it on the Google Earth stuff, I'm sure, but this creek channel being really close to this dock, that dock is going to be a primo spot to take a look at, especially with that creek channel being there. I didn't see anything offshore up in this area, but once we get back down into the main lake, that's really when we started finding stuff. Another fishing facility here, but not just the fishing facility, but that was a really good point. So a really good place to find and locate some fish. It's got a pretty good underwater point that comes out with the fishing facility. That all looks really good there. And then not a spot that I marked, but a spot you might want to consider is if you look at this, you've kind of got this flat top, right? 6 foot, pretty shallow up by the bank and everything. But if you get right off to the edge of it, almost right straight out from that dock, you'll notice there's a really big ledge that's right here, 6 foot. And then I'm going to get all the way down to almost 20 foot. So a pretty big ledge right in here. Let's go ahead and mark that one too. So I really like that one as well. So we'll save that. And then let's keep moving up and see what else we can find. Now, of course, I've lost my spot because I marked that ledge. I was right there. Let's keep moving up. The next thing I noticed right in here from a contour perspective is right here. You've got an old pond possibly. Again, not sure if we were able to uncover it on Google Earth because we can't pull this stuff down like we usually can, where you can see everything. This is definitely an old pond, and you've got an old pond dam right in here. You just want to scan this whole area, and then also this roadbed right here. If that roadbed still exists, you could have some rocks, some debris, things like that to fish around. This little pocket right here looks really juicy. Looks like a good spot to go look at to be able to locate some fish. When you come off here, again, you've got another good little point that's up here as well. Out in the middle of the lake where it kind of makes this point right here, this is a pretty good point that comes out. Notice it has a really good top on it, 6 to 12 foot, has a real good break on the end of it, and it's got a creek channel that's fairly close by, so that would be a good point to look at. You've also got some submerged culverts that are back in here. And then really if you're fishing the point thing from an offshore standpoint, depending on if primary points or secondary points, or main lake points or secondary points, but right here would be a good point to look at as well. And the reason why I say that is because you've got that creek bed that's coming really close to it. And notice it's got a pretty sharp drop right there at the edge of the point. So right in there would be a good spot to look at. Also out here, you've got an underwater point that comes out, little island. But if you get off the edge of the island, right off where that shelf is, that's going to be your primary spot to be able to try to find them. So right there where I have that icon at, it's going to be a perfect spot. And again, we put all of these waypoints plus all of the waypoints we have found on Google Earth. We put them all together, put them on an SD card for you, and have those available for you for purchase. So go out and check it out. Simplisticfishing.com is our website. You can get those waypoints for this lake, plus a ton of other lakes that we have. We're primarily in Texas. We're up to about 70 lakes. We have a couple lakes in Louisiana, but we're going to continue to add them, especially when you guys continue to suggest them to us. So go out, check out the website if you can. I would appreciate that. Let's keep moving up, and let's see what else we can find. Now, as we move up here, again, just following that creek channel, there's a couple interesting things here. This spot here was somewhat of interest to me because you have a little underwater hump that's out here. 5 foot, so you could take a look at that. I didn't really mark it as a primary spot because it's pretty far away from that creek channel, but it still looks fairly interesting. But what looks even more interesting is right over here off the edge of this point. They've all got these flat shelves, but then once you get off that shelf, that's when you find that drop, and that drop is right next to that creek channel, so that's going to be a really good spot to take a look at right in there. Now, as I move a little bit further up here, again, just a really good creek channel. Some things I just wanted to point out to you guys was right in here. If you'll notice, that looks like an old pond. If it's not an old pond, it's definitely a really deep hole. So let's say that you're trying to find them in the summertime or even in the early spring, and they need to pull back to a little bit of a deeper spot. That's gonna be a perfect spot for them to pull back to. So definitely go up in there and take a look at that. It's not necessarily offshore because you're up there in the creek, but I did want to point that out. Now, as we move past here, we talked about this point. There's some stuff way out here, out in the middle of the lake. If you want to take a look at, there's a nice little hump out here that we've marked for you guys. There's another little area right in here that says that there's a pile that's out here, probably like those pallets that they had mentioned further down the lake. So crappie areas, but where there's crappie, there's bass. So always take a look at those and see if those bass are relating to that. You got some more that's out here, another brush pile. You've got really these points, they're just not setting up well. Maybe this point would be good because it's got a little bitty drop, you know, but they just don't look that promising like our typical points that we would see. We've got some good spots around them though. So like right here, you've got a really good ledge, and you've got these creek channels that run all throughout. So you could always just hang on to the creek channels. I'm sure you could find some fish just relating to that. You've got a pretty good point here that's against this creek channel. And if you look over here, there's a little bit of pond here again, another old pond or something, but it's definitely a really deep hole right in the middle of some really shallow stuff. That is always a great place to find and locate some bass for sure. And then as we move further up this little cove, up in here, you're going to see that we've got this little submerged culvert that's over here. So that, again, looks really interesting as well. Looks like you could really have some success there, especially being in that flat. That could be the one thing that they really relate to overall. Now I'm going to keep moving down here since we already moved up that cove, and we're going to move down. We talked about this little drop. There's another fishing facility that's out here as well. And then if you look, you've kind of got this little underwater flat, pretty good flat coming right off this point. But if you look really closely, your really good drops are going to be right around in this area. And there's also a couple road beds that are in there. So you could find some debris, you could find some rocks. There could be all kinds of things you could find right in that area. I like it because it's got the flat, and then it's got the sharp drop right on the edge of it. But then you've also got all of that debris and stuff like that. So it sets up well. Main Lake Point, really like it. Got another submerged culvert you could go out and check out there. That one's pretty deep. But again, looking for that debris. You've got some more out here as well. And then moving on up into here, I just didn't find too much that was up in these, but man, those are great places to fish in the springtime, up in the backs of those coves and those little flats where those creek arms come in. They're just really good places to find fish. Now as we move over in here, one thing you could check out would be this little point right here, real shallow point, 4 foot. Let's go ahead and mark that thing because I do kind of like the way that sets up. So we'll go ahead and mark that one, but that one looks pretty decent as well, so you might want to check that one out. And then come over here, you've got another submerged culvert or a bridge. This one looks more like it's a bridge. And you know submerged bridges, especially in the Texas area, are money spots to find fish. So definitely you don't want to overlook them. You want to pay attention to them, see what you can find in those areas. Always scan them, especially in the fall and the summertime. Those are two great places, great times to find those fish hanging around those bridges. Again, we're getting pretty shallow up here, so didn't see too much from an offshore standpoint. We come over here, and we move a little bit further up. Not too much going on over here other than these little creek arms. But again, we talked about all this stuff on the Google Earth videos, if we were able to see those little creek arms. So just take a look at those. Pay attention to them. When you're out there with all these creek channels coming in, the fish are going to relate to those things. So follow those things. If you're in the area, start following the creek channel. The creek channel will lead you to the fish. So definitely pay attention to them. When you get out here on this little island out here, this looks pretty decent. I would like it better if that creek channel was closer, but definitely take a look at the island. It's got some pretty good sharp drops off the front of it that you could take a look at. And then getting back in here where this bridge is, again, hot spot, definitely pinch point. You've got a main creek channel coming through there. That all just looks really, really good. Definitely a good spot from an offshore standpoint. Now moving on down, these are just culverts that are out here, so you could check those out. I'd really just focus on the bridges myself. And then as we get down here, another good little point that comes out right here that has some pretty good drops to it. It's got the island that's up there with that shelf that we're typically used to seeing on this lake. And then you've got that really good drop off that's fairly close to a creek channel there as well. Now as we move further on down, again, got some good creek beds that are coming through here, but nothing too crazy from the point standpoint or any drops. I mean, maybe if we're back in here, if we're just looking, and of course, I couldn't mark everything for you guys, plus I didn't want to confuse you. But right in here would be a pretty good spot as well. If you look right there, you've got a nice little creek channel coming in. You probably got some spawning stuff going in there. You've got the shallow flats, and then you've got a pretty good drop right there. So it kind of goes up to 4 foot and then it drops down to say 13 foot. So right there in this area, anywhere right in here, but especially right there off the edge of that point, that could be a good area to go look at. And then let's keep moving on. We got another little underwater point here, right off the edge right there. Could have some potential, but again, pretty far away from that creek bed, so I didn't mark it for you guys, but just kind of hitting on some stuff as we move down here. And then we get into some really crazy, just offshore stuff that's way out here. A lot of brush piles. We got one right here. We got another one out here. These are just main brush piles that people have put out there. You got another submerged bridge that's out here as well. So that looks good. And then if you look right here off this big flat that comes out here, there's a road bed. So you could really focus in on that road bed and see if you could find some stuff on that road bed too if you couldn't find them on the bridge. Another bridge out here. Again, a really good hump that comes up here. This one comes up to 11 foot. Has a road bed off to the side of it, which is really cool. It's about a 9 foot difference. So it comes up pretty high compared to the rest of the stuff around it. Got that fishing facility out there that we talked about. And then moving down here, you just kind of get into some really deep stuff. There's a real deep pool right here, but again, you know, just not feeling that one good enough to be able to put a point there for you guys to check out. Coming back in here, again, not seeing too much from an offshore standpoint. Just focus on the creek channels, focus on the points and stuff like that. You should be fine. Not seeing anything too crazy in any of these spots until really we get all the way back down in this area. I kind of like this little point right here. It's pretty sharp, it comes out pretty good, has a pretty good drop, and it's fairly close to that creek channel. So check out that point, and then when you're out there, swing out and come out here and check out, one, check out that bridge, but two, come out here and check this thing out right in here. It's a little bitty, small little bitty hump that comes up about 5 or 6 feet. It would be a really good summertime spot, but there could be some harder area, some harder rock in there, stuff like that. There's no telling what you might be able to find in that area. And then as we move down, again, not seeing too much to mark for you guys there from offshore standpoint. Down in here looks interesting, right here where this little pinch point is. Both these areas right in here could definitely have some potential. And then back in here, right off of this point looks really good as well. And then really, guys, that takes us back down to the dam and covers us from the offshore standpoint for Caney Creek Reservoir. That wraps us up for our series for breaking down this lake. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have suggestions for other lakes that you'd like for us to break down, be more than happy to do it. Just leave us some comments below. And don't forget, you can get all these waypoints all put together on an SD card for you. Just go out to simplisticfishing.com and we'll get you hooked up. Until next time, hope you catch your PB. Take it easy.